If you drive in the United States, especially if you're over 65, there are changes happening right now that could affect your license, your insurance, and even whether you're allowed to drive at all. These are not rumors. They are not future proposals. In several states, they are already in effect, and most drivers won't realize it until the system flags them. One missed insurance payment, one license renewal you thought was routine, one quick glance at your phone at a red light. Under the new rules, that can be enough to trigger fines, suspensions, or restrictions caught without a warning, without a traffic stop, and without a second chance to explain. This video is not about fear. It's about knowing what's changed, why it matters, and how to protect your independence before a normal drive turns into a problem you never saw coming. A quiet DMV shift that could change how you drive. If you drive in the United States, especially if you're over the age of 65, there are changes happening right now that you need to understand. Across the country, state DMVs are quietly rolling out new driving rules. These are not proposals. They are not rumors. In several states, they are already active, and most drivers won't realize anything has changed until they're suddenly facing a problem they didn't expect. What makes this moment different is how these rules are being enforced. For decades, driving laws relied heavily on human judgment. If something went wrong, there was often a warning, a grace period, or a chance to explain. That era is ending. DMVs and transportation departments are moving toward automated systems, real-time verification, and stricter enforcement policies that leave very little room for error. Notices are increasingly digital. Databases update instantly. Penalties can trigger automatically. These changes are often introduced under the banner of public safety. Fewer accidents, fewer uninsured drivers, less distracted driving. On paper, that sounds reasonable. But in practice, the transition is catching careful, law-abiding drivers off guard. Retirees, grandparents, people who have driven safely for decades. The drivers running into trouble are rarely reckless. They are uninformed. They assume the system still works the way it always has. It doesn't. Understanding this shift is the first step to staying in control before a routine drive turns into an unexpected problem. From human judgment to automated enforcement. For a long time, driving laws in the United States were enforced with a human buffer. If something went wrong, there was often a warning, a conversation, or at least a chance to fix the issue before serious consequences followed. That buffer is disappearing. Across many states, DMVs and transportation agencies are shifting toward automated enforcement systems. These systems rely on real-time data, instant database updates, and automatic triggers that act without human discretion. What does that mean for drivers? It means the system no longer waits for a traffic stop, an accident, or a face-to-face interaction. Compliance is now verified continuously, often in the background, without the driver realizing it's happening. Insurance status is checked electronically, license eligibility is evaluated digitally, renewal requirements are filtered by age and flagged automatically. When something doesn't match the system's expectations, penalties can be triggered immediately. Notices are increasingly sent by email or electronic mail systems. If a message is missed, ignored, or misunderstood, the system does not pause. It moves forward. This new approach is presented as efficient and fair, and in many ways it is. But it also leaves very little room for assumptions or habits formed under the old system. Drivers who rely on how it's always worked are the ones most likely to be caught off guard, especially older drivers who renewed the same way for years, paid insurance without checking details, and trusted that small mistakes would be forgiven. Under the new system, they often aren't. Understanding this shift is essential because every rule that follows is built on this new mindset. Mandatory vision. Retesting for drivers 65 and older. The first major rule change is already affecting millions of older drivers, often without any warning. In several states, drivers aged 65 and older are no longer allowed to renew their licenses online or by mail. Instead, they are required to appear in person at a DMV office and pass a vision screening before their license can be renewed. For years, renewal was routine, a form, a payment, maybe a new photo. That familiarity led many drivers to assume the process would never change, but today some only discover the new requirement when the online system suddenly tells them they are no longer eligible to renew the way they always have. From the DMV's perspective, the reasoning is based on safety data. Vision-related issues increase with age, even when someone feels their eyesight is still good. Conditions like cataracts, glaucoma, and macular degeneration often develop gradually, and many people adjust without realizing how much their vision has changed. But for drivers, this moment can feel deeply personal. Driving represents independence. It means grocery trips, doctor visits, seeing family, and staying active. Walking into a DMV expecting a simple appointment and being handed a vision chart can be shocking. The rule itself is not the problem. The surprise is drivers who arrive unprepared are the ones who feel blindsided. Drivers who prepare ahead of time usually have a very different experience. What happens if you struggle with the vision test? For many older drivers, the fear around mandatory vision testing comes from one question: what happens if I don't pass? The answer is often very different from what people imagine. In most cases, struggling with a vision test does not mean you automatically lose your driver's license. Instead, it usually leads to conditions or next steps. You may be required to wear corrective lenses while driving. You may be limited to daytime driving only. In some situations, you may be asked to see an eye specialist who can determine whether your vision can be corrected to meet the state's standard. What turns this process into a problem is not the rule itself. It's being unprepared. Drivers who walk into the DMV without knowing a vision test is required often feel blindsided. They are caught off guard, nervous, and under pressure. That stress alone can affect performance. By contrast, drivers who prepare ahead of time usually have a much smoother experience. A recent eye exam, an updated prescription, a clear understanding of their vision condition. These small steps shift the experience from reactive to controlled. From the DMV's perspective, the goal is safety. From the driver's perspective, the goal is independence. Preparation is what allows those two goals to coexist. If you are over 65 and your license renewal is coming up within the next year, the smartest move is simple. Schedule an eye exam before the DMV ever asks you to. When you prepare on your own timeline, you stay in control of the outcome. Real-time insurance checks, with almost no margin for error. The second major rule change affects every driver, regardless of age, and it's moving faster than many people realize. Across many states, car insurance is now verified in real time through direct connections between insurance companies and DMV databases. This means enforcement no longer waits for a traffic stop or an accident. The system checks continuously in the background. In the past, insurance enforcement was often reactive. If you were pulled over, you showed proof. If your coverage lapsed quietly, you might not face consequences right away. That system no longer exists in many states. Today, if your insurance policy expires, is canceled, or lapses for any reason, that information can be transmitted to the DMV almost immediately. There is no grace period, no manual review. The system simply registers that your vehicle is uninsured. Depending on your state, this can automatically trigger fines, registration suspension, and in some cases, even license suspension, all without any police interaction at all. What makes this especially dangerous is how easy a lapse can happen. A missed payment, an expired credit card, a bank error, switching insurance providers and assuming coverage overlaps. The system does not care why it happened. It only sees one thing: insured or not insured. Under this new rule, staying insured now means actively monitoring your coverage, not just assuming it's fine. How a one-day insurance lapse can trigger major consequences. What makes real-time insurance enforcement so dangerous is not the rule itself. It's how easily people fall into violation without realizing it. Most insurance lapses don't happen because drivers intentionally cancel coverage. They happen because of ordinary, everyday issues. A credit card expires, a bank changes account numbers, an automatic payment fails silently, a driver switches insurance companies and assumes the dates overlap. Under the old system, these mistakes often went unnoticed for a short time. Today, even a single day without active coverage can be enough for the DMV system to flag your vehicle as uninsured. Once that happens, the process moves fast. Depending on your state, fines can be issued automatically. Vehicle registration can be suspended. In some cases, driving privileges can be affected, all without a traffic stop or warning. Many drivers only discover the problem when a notice arrives in the mail, or when they're told they can no longer legally drive their own car. By then, fixing the issue isn't just about reinstating insurance. It often involves fees, paperwork, and delays that could have been avoided. The system does not evaluate intent. It does not ask why the lapse occurred. It only checks status active or inactive. That's why responsible driving now includes active insurance monitoring, not just paying the bill, but verifying coverage, especially after renewals, payment changes, or provider switches. In this environment, assumptions are expensive. Distracted driving rules are broader than most people realize. The third major rule change is where many careful drivers are getting the biggest shock. For years, most people believed distracted driving meant one thing: texting while driving. If you weren't typing a message behind the wheel, you assumed you were safe. That assumption is now outdated. In many states, distracted driving laws have been expanded so broadly that behaviors once considered harmless can now lead to steep fines, points on your license, and even suspension if violations repeat. Under these newer definitions, distracted driving does not just include texting or holding a phone to your ear. It can include looking at your phone, checking a notification, scrolling a playlist, adjusting a navigation app, or glancing at your screen while stopped at a red light. In some states, your vehicle doesn't even need to be moving. If the engine is on and an officer interprets your phone interaction as distraction, that can be enough. What makes this especially troubling is how normal these behaviors feel. Many drivers don't see themselves as distracted. They don't text while driving, but they do look down when the phone buzzes. They do adjust directions when traffic changes. Under the new rules, those moments matter. Penalties escalate quickly. What once resulted in a modest fine can now cost hundreds of dollars, add points to your record, and raise insurance rates for years. The margin for error has narrowed, and many drivers don't realize it until after the citation arrives. How cameras and AI are now watching driver behavior. What makes the new distracted driving rules especially impactful is not just what counts as a violation, it's how those violations are now detected. In multiple states, law enforcement agencies are deploying advanced technology designed specifically to identify distracted driving. This includes high-resolution cameras, roadside monitoring systems, and artificial intelligence trained to detect driver behavior. These systems are not guessing. They are designed to recognize when a driver's eyes are down, when a phone is being held, or when hand movement suggests device use. Some of this technology is mounted on patrol vehicles. In other cases, it's installed near intersections or integrated into existing traffic cameras. When potential distraction is detected, the system can alert officers in real time or capture evidence that is reviewed later. In some areas, enforcement is moving toward automation, similar to red light or speed cameras. That means you may not be pulled over at all. Instead, a citation can arrive in the mail days later. There is no conversation, no warning, no opportunity to explain that you were stopped at a light or only glanced at your screen. The system records behavior, not intent. For many careful drivers, this is where trouble begins. They don't see themselves as distracted. They believe they are being cautious. But the technology doesn't interpret behavior the way humans do. Under this system, prevention is the only reliable protection. The pattern behind all three rules: constant verification. When you step back and look at these three rule changes together, a clear pattern begins to emerge. Mandatory vision testing, real-time insurance verification, expanded distracted driving enforcement powered by technology. At first glance, these rules may seem unrelated, but they are all driven by the same underlying shift in philosophy. State DMVs are moving away from occasional checks and toward constant verification. In the past, compliance was assumed unless something went wrong. Vision was checked infrequently. Insurance was verified during traffic stops or accidents. Driving behavior was judged by an officer in the moment. Today, the system works differently. Your vision is checked more often and tied directly to renewal eligibility. Your insurance status is monitored continuously through electronic reporting. Your driving behavior is observed by cameras and algorithms, not just human eyes. This means consequences no longer wait for an incident. A missed insurance payment can trigger penalties automatically. A vision issue appears at renewal instead of after a crash. A brief glance at a phone can result in a citation without a conversation. For older drivers, this shift feels especially abrupt, not because they are unsafe, but because they built their habits under a very different system, one that allowed more discretion, more explanation, and more grace. Understanding this pattern is powerful. Once you recognize that enforcement is now continuous, not occasional, the rest of the rules start to make sense. And more importantly, you can adapt before the system adapts for you. When penalties ripple into daily life. Under the new enforcement model, the consequences of a small issue rarely stay small: a suspended registration, a temporary license restriction, an unexpected fine. On paper, these may seem manageable. In real life, they often trigger a chain reaction that affects far more than driving alone. For many older adults, driving is not a convenience, it is a lifeline. It means getting to medical appointments, picking up prescriptions, buying groceries, visiting family, and maintaining independence. When driving privileges are interrupted, even briefly, daily routines can unravel quickly. A registration suspension may prevent you from legally driving your own vehicle. A license issue can make it harder to renew insurance or increase premiums for years. Missed appointments and reliance on others can follow, creating stress and loss of confidence. Financial consequences add another layer. Automated fines, reinstatement fees, higher insurance rates. These costs often arrive suddenly and stack on top of one another. And because enforcement is automated, resolving the issue can take time, paperwork, and repeated follow-ups. What makes this especially frustrating is that many drivers did nothing reckless. They missed a notice. They misunderstood a renewal rule. They assumed a small lapse would be forgiven. Under the current system, assumptions are costly. This is why awareness matters. Catching issues early prevents disruptions that can ripple through health, finances, and independence long after the original problem is fixed. New driving rules require new habits. As enforcement becomes more automated, the biggest adjustment for drivers is not fear, it's mindset. Under the old system, many driving responsibilities were handled when reminders arrived: a renewal notice in the mail, a bill when insurance was due, a warning after a minor mistake. That rhythm no longer works reliably. Today's system assumes continuous responsibility. That doesn't mean you need to overhaul your life. It means building a few simple habits that align with how enforcement now works. For vision requirements, the most effective habit is scheduling regular eye exams, even when you feel your eyesight hasn't changed. Doing this on your own timeline removes pressure during license renewal and prevents surprises at the DMV. For insurance, set it and forget it is no longer enough. Automatic payments help, but they are not foolproof. Payment methods expire. Accounts change. A quick monthly check to confirm active coverage can prevent months of complications later. And when it comes to distracted driving, the safest habit is the simplest. Keep your phone completely out of reach while driving. Not on the seat, not in the cup holder, not mounted where notifications can pull your attention. Set navigation before you start driving and leave it alone. These habits are not about restriction, they are about control. Drivers who adapt early experience fewer interruptions, fewer penalties, and far less stress. The system rewards consistency, not perfection. Why older drivers feel the impact. First, many older drivers ask the same question: why does it feel like these rules are aimed at us? The answer is not that senior drivers are unsafe. In fact, many older adults are among the most cautious drivers on the road. The reason they feel the impact first is structural. Age-based renewal requirements already exist in many states. Vision testing thresholds, in-person renewals, and medical reviews are more common for drivers over 65. When DMVs shift to automated systems, those age-based rules are the first to be enforced more strictly and more consistently. Technology doesn't overlook, it doesn't make exceptions. It applies the rule exactly as written, every time. That means older drivers are often the first to encounter new procedures, new checks, and new consequences. Not because they did something wrong, but because their records are reviewed more frequently. This can feel unsettling, especially for people who have driven safely for decades. Driving is deeply connected to independence, dignity, and quality of life. Losing confidence in that stability can be emotionally difficult. But there is an important flip side to this reality. Drivers who prepare early often experience the opposite effect. When vision is documented, insurance is uninterrupted, and habits are clearly compliant, there is less room for restrictions or complications. Preparation does not take independence away. It protects it. The system is looking for assurance. When you provide it consistently, you reduce the chance of being flagged and keep control where it belongs. A simple checklist to stay ahead of the DMV system. Once you understand how driving enforcement has changed, the next step is knowing exactly what to do. Not someday, not later. Now. The goal under the new system is simple: remove uncertainty before it turns into a penalty. And that starts with a few practical steps that any driver can take. First, treat vision care as part of driving responsibility. If you're over 65, schedule regular eye exams even if your eyesight feels fine. Keep your prescription current and bring documentation with you to any DMV appointment. Preparation here prevents surprises. Second, actively monitor your car insurance. Do not assume automatic payments mean continuous coverage. Check your policy status at least once a month. Be especially careful during renewals, credit card changes, or when switching providers. One missed day is all it takes. Third, eliminate distractions entirely while driving. Decide ahead of time that your phone stays out of reach. Set navigation before you start the engine. If something urgent comes up, pull over completely. Fourth, pay attention to notices. DMV communication is increasingly digital. Emails, online portals, and mailed notices matter more than ever. Missing one message can trigger automatic consequences. These steps are not extreme. They are realistic responses to a system that now verifies compliance constantly. Drivers who follow this checklist don't just avoid penalties, they protect their independence, finances, and peace of mind. Awareness is the new protection. When you put all of these changes together, one message becomes clear. Driving rules in the United States have not just changed on paper, they have changed in how they are enforced, quietly, automatically, and continuously. Vision testing is no longer occasional. Insurance coverage is no longer assumed. Driver behavior is no longer judged only by human eyes. The system now verifies compliance all the time, not just when something goes wrong. For many drivers, especially older adults, this shift feels uncomfortable. It challenges habits that worked for decades. It removes the safety net of warnings and grace periods, and it replaces human judgment with technology that does not pause or explain. But here is the most important truth. These changes do not mean you have to give up driving. They do not mean independence is being taken away. What they mean is that staying informed and prepared now matters more than experience alone. Drivers who adapt early stay in control. Drivers who understand the pattern avoid surprises. Drivers who prepare protect their mobility, their finances, and their peace of mind. Awareness is no longer optional. It is the new form of protection. The rules may continue to expand from state to state. Enforcement may become even more automated, but knowledge keeps you ahead of the system instead of reacting to it. And when you know how the system works, you don't drive in fear, you drive with confidence.